Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hi, this is Joanne Victoria with another amazing episode of the Sanity Project podcast. The Sanity Project podcast has guests who help you, our listeners, discover a life of clarity, confidence, and success. Our guest today is Victor Ung. Victor is a product manager turned life coach, podcaster, and writer. After Victor felt burnt out in the tech world and noticed how fast-paced, stressed, and vulnerable people were, he realized it was not the right environment for him to be his best self. And I'm going to let Victor, who lives in Seattle, Washington, tell you more about that himself. Victor is also going to talk today about emotional intelligence and how to better manage your emotions in the moment, no matter what environment you're in. How to calm the inner conflict within your mind so that you can show up better for yourself and those around you. So welcome to the podcast, Victor Ung.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm grateful that you are here, and I'm glad I found you.
Yeah.
I get attracted by certain people who, whatever the energy is that's popping off the page, and then I stalk and go after the kind of people with the topics that I think are important. So tell us a little about yourself and how you got to this point, up to being a product manager, then going into the life coach, podcaster, and writer arenas, and where you are now.
Yes.
How did you get here, Victor?
Sure. It's a journey for sure. But so I've always been interested in and love technology and people, and that's just something I've felt like I explored as I continue throughout the year. So went to school at the University of Washington for informatics. And for those not familiar, I like to describe that as both sort of like the intersection of computer science with psychology and business. So kind of, not only developing and designing software, but actually kind of incorporating a lot of the people side of things too. So how do you design the technology best for people? So it's a lot of user experience research and whatnot. So did that, and then went into technology consulting at Accenture, a very large consulting firm that helps me learn a lot about web development and eventually transition into product management, which was a great role for me. I really loved being the sort of liaison between the people or the business and the creative side, as well as the technology side and the architects there too. So found that was a really good role. And then, started realizing that, actually throughout in consulting, I realized that there was some sense in me that realized it wasn't I didn't see myself as a consultant in the long run. Even when I first joined the company, the people were great and everything. And what I realized though in consulting was that there's a certain kind of, I'd say there's some kind of professionalism that's needed and required, especially if you're being hired and coming in as an expert. There's a certain level of, sort of professionalism and expertise that is required. And for me, being the sort of fun-loving sort of nature, it just didn't seem like a right fit. And so, but I still went through and continued consulting for about half a decade, and then after a while, noticed that there were a lot that was missing in terms of sort of an adult skill set, I'd say. And being able, for people and within the workplace, especially, but not only there too, within other areas of my life, it was communication seemed to be, something that was lacking within people. And I found myself a lot more curious about that. I've always been interested in psychology and the way and understanding how our minds and emotions affect, our behaviors. And I found myself very curious about that and started learning about emotional intelligence. I think I, first heard of it through a YouTube video, actually, by the School of Life. That was, I think, was literally called "What is Emotional Intelligence?" And everything in that video resonated with me in terms of what I found was missing in people, which is this, this self-awareness, the emotional regulation, being able to communicate our emotions, and how that impacts our decision making and stress management. And so in consulting, I realized, that's why a lot of our issues within the projects, were not just technology issues, but it was mostly people issues, mostly communication issue. And so kind of went off into a different route from there, to try to learn more about EQ and understand how we can all improve that, so that we can, not only be better coworkers, but better people within our lives as well.
Yeah, that all makes a great deal of sense. I know it is very difficult as a human being to be a part of a team, which is prevalent in the tech world. Teams rule, and have everybody on the same page, especially with the different emotional levels that they come to work with. My own personal experience with people such as that, who I understand not wanting to be a consultant, because it's a box. It's a box. Being a coach is not a box. It's very flexible. It's very movable. But when people have expectations of a consultant, and they have different expectations from a coach. I don't think most people have figured it out yet, even though it's been around for 30 plus years officially. But I think going into EQ the way you have obviously covers all of the things that you wanted to have, because you said communication was lacking, and it is lacking in most of the workforce, especially in the technology field, any kind of technology.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because, I mean, technology does attract a certain, type of person too. For the most part, especially as developers, you're very logical, very practical thinkers, very. So it kind of, dealing with something more intangible and abstract as our emotions, and feelings is very tough. But that gets in the way of being able to, really be productive, not only on your own, but within a team as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. Developers especially, sorry, but developers have a hard time expressing their emotions. I know that as a blanket statement, but my experience with them is that. And, they just want to do the work, and they don't want to be bothered answering questions as much, because they have these thoughts and ideas that come out of mostly the left brain. And I think you're probably a total brain person as opposed to left or right, because you worked in the IT field for a long enough time to live in the left brain, but the right brain is where all those emotions flitter about and need some attention.
I try to balance both, yeah.
Yes. Well, just in your expression to me in the first few minutes of where you came from and how you like to be in the world, and what's too tight for you and what isn't. And I think that there are a lot of people listening who experience the same feelings. of frustration, as you spoke about, because you're not totally, as you also say in your query here, how to get past feeling frustrated or unfulfilled with your day to day and to live life with more intention, which goes beyond just completing the project.
Mm-hmm.
It's about your life, and it's about their lives.
Right. Yeah, I think, to that comment, there is a sort of sense that work is, such a huge part of our lives, and we would dedicate so much to it, in everything we do. Like, we go to school, work hard, get the good grades so we can get into college, so we can get this job, so we can, retire and save money for our families. And it becomes such a huge focus that we forget about, the other parts of our lives that can fulfill us or to provide more meaning and fulfillment in what we do in general. So I mentioned that because that was something that I got lost in, and especially, coming from an Asian culture where, with immigrant parents, that was the sole focus, is to get the good grades and get a good job so you can support your family. And even while I'm transitioning right now into life coaching, it's still something that I battle with a lot. For the most part, I think my parents are somewhat supportive, but it is obviously very nerve wracking for them to, be able to be comfortable with this risk. And then that, I think, is a larger comment on, I think, most people, where taking this sort of risk, this especially an emotional risk, to do something so out of the ordinary, is very fearful, so fearful that it limits them, it debilitates them.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, have you made them aware of some of the high fee coaches out there who do a darn good job?
Yeah.
I mean, there are some out there who, I'm not in that category for $1 million a year,
Right.
but they exist, and they're legitimate, and the risks that you need to take, and you're dealing with two things: your culture, your family, and also your desire to be a great EQ coach. And just, patience is the key here.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm having lots of conversations with them for sure.
Well, if it's something, yes. I mean, if there are, how do I say this? If, people have, as you say, you get up, you go to school, you get the good grades, you get the job, you get the girl, you get the guy, whatever it might be, you get the house, and you have your 401k. Not everybody lives like that.
Mm-hmm.
And actually 401k is bust anyway. Better off to go out and buy real estate, but rent it out, keep it, move it over, buy something more expensive, or 5 more houses, and then you don't have to work. Tell your parents that's what you're going to wind up doing, so they'll know that you're going to have some income coming up in the next 5 to 10 years without a problem. It's very difficult to do that and feel comfortable, and I know that there are many listeners out there who are in the same situation, same or similar situation. And yet how long have you been doing this coaching? That a year, 2 years, 3 years,
This
6
is my
months?
rookie year, so just
Okay.
getting started here, and but I've been definitely learning about EQ for a couple of years now, and doing a lot of writing around it.
Well, it's important. It's very important. The emotions are all we have as human beings. That's what we are.
Yeah.
We're baskets full of emotions, and they rear their good head or their ugly head from time to time, depending upon what's going on around us and how our environment, as you said, to manage your emotions in the moment. And, I push neutrality. I follow that as much as possible. If people can remain neutral and not extreme, they're better off in the long run because there's less stress. And less stress means better communication, more success, happy parents,
Right.
all of that stuff. But when there's stress present, that creates a huge problem. So stress does occur. I know that I've dealt with teams and individuals at tech businesses, actually not tech businesses per se, but healthcare businesses, which still have a lot of tech in them.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some people who just have a very difficult time opening up, and others who you can't shut down. So, because they're just all over the place. So, how do you help people manage their emotions in the moment when they're putting together a project and everybody has their own idea? Nobody knows who is truly supposed to be running it. Is it going to be my project manager, my product manager, my director? Who's going to tell me what to do? Who am I going to have to report to? And then everybody goes crazy until they figure that one out.
Right. That's kind of difficult to comment on, obviously, not knowing the situation, because everybody, every project is going to be different and everybody has different.
But I'm talking, I know, I appreciate that. And I don't mean to make it difficult, but I'm talking about the people. They're reactive.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it is, I think it does start with being able to sort of define boundaries, and where one stops and starts, right? So knowing sort of your roles and responsibility within the team is important. I think a lot of us, at least in my experience, that's something we don't discuss as much, and I think I'm not exactly sure why. I think maybe because there's just a lot of assumptions that are being made, and people kind of sort of default to their job title and say, oh, this isn't my this isn't my role, this isn't what I'm supposed to do, and then that creates a lot of pointing fingers and blaming others, just because there's just no cohesion there. And so, yeah, I mean, having that said, it might sound like that is conflicting with setting boundaries, but I think it comes down to, knowing that you're all on one side. It knows, you're working together towards a common goal, and that the issue is that most people think that you have to be super competitive or fighting against each other, and it's a scarcity mindset is what that is, right? And so being able, it's a really big cultural thing, I'd say. Maybe within the projects that I was on, there wasn't as much focus on culture, and that could be why people seemed like they were all on their own and trying to do their own thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's management and leadership. If they don't create that environment that's conducive to people working together, it's not going to be successful.
Yeah, and then in terms of the emotions too, I think from an individual level, it's being able to slow down, right? I think we all want to be good and good employees and good team workers, but it can be hard if there are so many things just being thrown around, and like fires being you have to put out, and so in order to develop that self-awareness and that emotional regulation, the first step is to really prioritize taking the time for yourself. And a really good practice that I learned in my own journey in trying to develop EQ is called the 6-second method, where even if you can just take 6 seconds to, breathe in and breathe out, it can do so much, right? And it might feel awkward. It might feel a little weird to do in the moment, but even just taking a deep breath in and out can help you slow down and see things from a different angle. So it's a really good practice to do in the moment. And within that too, kind of layered on top is something called the fly on the wall, where if you can slow down to then zoom out and see your situation from a third perspective, there's so much wisdom that can be tapped into that, because how we tend to give so much better advice or like perspective to someone else, outside of us, right?
Of course.
So because we're not biased towards that, and we're not so deep entrenched in the emotion of it. So if you can slow down to do that for yourself, you can actually draw out a lot of wisdom there.
Well, I'm always telling people say, well, I can't breathe, I can't slow down, I usually tell them, go to the bathroom. Find a quiet place, go to the restroom, the bathroom, however you want to call it, and find that privacy there for just that few moments that you're in there. Just stand still, take a breath, take more than one, take as many as you need to get back into your body, because people, number one, they don't know how to breathe. They don't breathe down to their belly, and they have to our lungs are huge. That's going to be a good visual to take somewhere. A picture of the lungs inside of our body, how huge they are.
Yeah.
They take up the entire inside. And many of us never get halfway through a breath, let alone all the way down to the bottom. But that's what people need to do, and they can do that in 6, 7, or 8 seconds. That's doable. Right. The more they practice it, the easier it becomes. But it's something that is so vital to breathe. It slows you down. It stops you from being really dumb and making dumb mistakes and, shouting out at somebody else, maybe a team member that you don't like what they're having to say. There's so many reasons to breathe. And people go, oh, I do that automatically. Yeah, that's just to stay alive. We want to do more than stay alive. We want to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah, the breath is so important and interesting. It's both a voluntary and involuntary experience, right? So it's really interesting to both to be intentional about it. But doing so can help in so many ways.
So how is this turn into emotional intelligence working for you?
Yeah, I am loving it. It's it really, it's something that I feel like was something I knew intuitively for a while, and it's the type of thing where you hear it and it's like, oh, that's common sense, but common sense is not common knowledge. And so learning about EQ and being able to have a framework to sort of model after has helped me kind of sort of compartmentalize the areas of improvement that I could be working on too, right? And it helps me better identify specific steps to work on. And I mean, even within an emotion in itself, right? We would kind of generally say that, oh, I'm angry, and that is, it's a wide reaching emotion that can be very different for different situations and whatnot. But having such a sort of vague description about it makes it that much harder to then find the steps to work on it or resolve it. And so, another good practice is to, use more descriptive emotional words to describe what you're feeling. So rather than saying that you're angry, maybe you're more frustrated, maybe you're more irritated, maybe there's something that something else that you can use that will help you see the situation and what you're feeling differently, and then you can actually find the steps to work on it. But yeah, so like learning about EQ and being able to really, see a framework within me, and me being this logical thinker, like I want to have something harder to kind of describe something so abstract as an emotion, right? Has been super helpful. And I'm excited to keep learning because I know I'm not going to be an expert immediately, but it's a continual journey and process to get better at.
Yeah, as long as you're alive, you will be learning.
Yep, for
and
sure.
That's something to be grateful for. So how can people find you, Victor Ung?
Yeah, they can visit my website at Victor Ung. It's victorung.com. Where you could schedule a kind of a free discovery call to get to know each other, to see if it even makes sense to work together. And if not, you can also subscribe to my podcast and my blog at victorung.com/subscribe. And doing so, there's actually a free PDF that of 11 exercises that I've collected to help people within their own emotional intelligence as well. So it's a lot of what I mentioned in here, with the fly on the wall and the 6-second method. But so victorung.com/subscribe.
Yeah, and I suggest that people go to your website because I have a copy in front of me of 11 ways to increase your emotional intelligence all by yourself, just as a start. And easy peasy, one piece of paper, that's all you have to print out, fold it up, put it in your pocket, and off you go. Well, I want to thank Victor for being here and helping our audience understand more about emotional intelligence, and also how his path turned him from a product manager and a consultant to a life coach, podcaster, and writer. I'm grateful to you for being here today, Victor. And people can also go to my website at askjoannevictoria.com, and you can download many free things that I can't remember what they are right now, but they do exist. Trust me. Askjoannevictoria.com. And everybody, I'm grateful to you for listening to me and Victor Ung. This is Joanne Victoria and Victor saying bye, and everybody have a great day.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.